Okay, good morning, just about, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching it. You might not be watching it at all. Okay, we've got old Bergin not looking quite as happy this week, unfortunately, but we know that greatness will come again for him. But so what I'm doing this week, again, nice and quickly, is I'm just talking about my top 6 motivational quotes of lockdown. So anyone who knows me knows that I love a motivational quote. I love finding things that people have said that I think kind of pertain and help us in our current situation. So what I'm going to do is go through 6 quotes that I have used in the last year and talking about lockdown and just hoping that they might inspire us to think in a slightly different way about how we work. So the first one, and then I was actually only heard this a couple of weeks ago and I've been saying it ever since. So Riz Ahmed, the actor, I was listening to a podcast and he said this: the challenge is the gift. He was actually talking about his own experience of COVID and losing a couple of family members. And I kind of thought, wow, that is so profound. The challenge is the gift. That actually this difficult situation we're in is an opportunity to try and do things differently or kind of interact with people differently. I kind of looked it up. I've been thinking, he can't have said it in the first place. There must be some great philosopher that said it, but I can't find it. It seems to be from him. It's a great line. That idea that whatever is thrown at us is a gift for us to do something with. Okay, next up is, probably should be number 1, to be honest, but because it's so overused, it's in my number 5. But I used it in a letter only a couple of weeks ago to families, and of course it's the great Mandela quote of education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And if you don't believe that, you should not be in education. And you as young people must believe that. You must believe that you can change the world by the power of the knowledge that you get through your education. Okay? Because that's the bottom line for me. That education is the great food which can nourish you to be able to go out and do great things. Education and knowledge are beautiful things. Mandela recognised that, and in lockdown, when it's difficult sometimes to be educated, we've got to remember that. Next up, okay? I did an assembly last year about Black Lives Matter, and I used this quote here. Angela Davis, the great activist from the 1970s, now a great academic, said, "I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. I'm no longer accepting things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept." And for me, over the last year with the Black Lives Matter movement, that is a real key. That actually, if something is not good enough, we no longer accept it's not good enough. We no longer say that, yeah, well, it's always been like that, it's okay. We now are saying, hopefully, that momentum is building, that whatever we do has to be the best, and we have to accept the best, whatever our situation. And that, again, is a real key from lockdown. Some people might be having a great time and you're not. No, you need to work out what it is and demand that you have the same opportunities as everybody else. Okay, and then of course, number 3 on my list is one of the great poets of the 20th century, Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I've learned that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think more, that feeling of empathy, of working with each other, has been such a huge part of the last year, of not marginalising people, of not saying that person doesn't matter, of making sure that the key thing that you do is to care for people and treat them well. That's a fantastic one. Right, we're on to my top 2 now. Number 2 is one which actually seemingly doesn't have much to do with lockdown or anything like that. It's my favourite novel, The Great Gatsby. It has been my favourite novel for 30 years now, from when I did it at A-level. Again, I used it in a letter only a couple of weeks ago about lockdown, but it's a novel about a man called Jay Gatsby, who is trying hard to capture something, trying hard to achieve something, and it is constantly just beyond his grasp. And at the end of the novel, which is beautifully written, one of the most beautifully written novels you'll ever read, it says, it's eluded us, this idea, this thing that we can grasp, eluded us now, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms further, and then one fine morning. The idea that whatever you're trying to achieve in life, whatever justice you're trying to achieve, whatever grade you're trying to achieve, you never ever give up. You always make sure that even if it's not in your grasp, that the next day you try again and you try again, and then one fine morning it might happen for you. And so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. One day we'll get there. We'll never stop trying. So that's my number 2. And then my number 1, which is my favourite quote of all time, because I think probably the greatest living human being at the moment, Desmond Tutu. And I think this is how I try and live my life, I hope, and how I think all of us should be living our life in lockdown. Okay? And Desmond Tutu says, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. So essentially what he's saying is that if you see wrong, if you see injustice, then you have to fight it. Okay? You can't step back and say it's none of my business. You can't say, well, it's got nothing to do with me. You know, if an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. And I think one thing we have learned in the last 9 months, 10 months, nearly coming up to a year now, is that actually we are members of a society, and especially the school, the Elm Green school community, and that we all have to look after each other. And as soon as you're not looking after each other, as soon as you step back and say, that's not my problem, then actually you're in the wrong, okay? Because you're on this side of the oppressor. And so what we have done, hopefully at the Elm Green School, hopefully in society over the last year or so, is we actually say, no, it's not good enough. We are all responsible for each other, and we all have to make an effort for each other. That's what we believe in at the Elm Green School. That's why I love a motivational quote, or a quote from one of the kind of the great thinkers of our time, and especially even Riz Ahmed, the actor. And that's my assembly for this week. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next Monday.